A professor at StFX University in Antigonish is working to create a new registry for some Canadian scientists. Dr. Brian Lynch wants to create a chemical compound registry so that anyone who discovers a new compound can log that information in a central database to prove they found it first. He says it's vital so that Canadians have ownership of their discoveries.
Good morning, Mr. Lynch.
Good morning.
Let's start right in the lab. What kind of chemical compounds are we talking about?
There's a big range that are produced by academic chemists in universities and in government research departments. It's the order of millions of candidate substances. I myself have got roughly 2,500 that are unique, that I was going to say I made, but really it's the students who make them. They do all the dog work while we're out teaching.
So what potential could these chemical compounds have?
Well, they could be the next measles vaccine, which is a little bit in the news at the moment. But potentially there's no limit, because we're almost at the start of when penicillin was isolated by chance and led to saving a whole lot of needless deaths in World War II.
And are we talking about compounds that potentially could be helpful for things other than medical solutions?
Certainly, yeah.
So what happens now in the country? Do we have these pockets of scientists doing their individual work, but nobody knows in its totality the kind of work that's being done?
The only way you would see that is if the work is published in a peer-reviewed journal, but not everything that research chemists do ends up being publishable. If I can give a personal example, I've got hypertension. I've had it for 30 years at least. There's a drug that's called Adalat that controls blood pressure very, very well. It's too cheap. It was produced first in 1880. It's so simple to make that we have our undergraduate students make some as an example of an organic synthesis. Now, it's not a popular drug with pharmaceutical companies because it's not patentable.
So how does it work now in Europe and the United States when it comes to these types of chemical compounds?
Well, actually, in the US, it works voluntarily. If you think you have something interesting, you approach the National Institutes of Health Molecular Libraries program and say, I've got some of this stuff. Maybe it's useful for some dread disease, but we don't know until we screen it. The NIH says sure. They've got maybe $400 million a year to play with. So they're in a sense they're competing with private industry, but generally the NIH makes companies promise that they won't screw the public, which doesn't work very well. The companies have smart lawyers and they can work around things.
So would a registry protect the scientist in some ways too?
Oh, yeah, it could.
Do you give away the rights to the compound, though, after that?
No.
So if there is a discovery or an application found for that compound, then you as the scientist would benefit from that financially going forward?
Oh, yeah. But that would be a matter of negotiation.
So what steps are you taking to create a Canadian version of the registry?
For about 3 years, we've been trying to raise money. But you're handicapped because it's not pure research. It's not even increasing the amount of published material. So it doesn't fit in with any of the priorities that NSERC is supposed to have.
NSERC being the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council.
Because they just the grant system, it's called discovery grants, and it focuses on making something new and different. An example is the Dalhousie Prof who just received the Hertzberg Prize, which is $1 million plus change, and there's no equivalent pot of money for that for this type of registry yet.
Well, what's the problem with sending these chemical compounds out of the country and letting somebody else conduct these sorts of tests? Why do you think it's more important to have that all done sort of in-house or in-country, so to speak?
The company, or it's now a foundation in Switzerland, they're in it for money too. They would have the screening facility. So what you're doing is exporting an opportunity for peanuts. If it's done in Canada, at least the Canadian industry then has a prospect of having a profitable operation.
So how much appetite is there for a Canadian registry in Canada so far?
We don't really know yet. Plan A would be just to poll all the Canadian research chemists and say, would you participate in this if we had an organisation that would do it, that would essentially index everything.
Do you think the government supports it?
Well, it supports it, but I talked with Peter McKay about it, and there's encouragement, but there's not a promise of money.
Okay, well, Mr. Lynch, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, okay, good. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Brian Lynch is a chemistry professor at STFX University in Antigonish. He's working to create a registry of chemical compounds created in Canada.